The garden party was everything my mother was good at making. The grass was cut very neatly. The tables had clean white tablecloths. There was a big cake with 3 layers. It looked beautiful. I think the cake cost more than our whole grocery shopping for a month. This party was not just for my nephew Tiberian's 8th birthday. It was a big show. My mother, Zariel Kestrel, liked to show people how rich and important she was. When we arrived, she told us to stay near the back. "Stay near the back," she said. My husband, Bastian, fixed his tie and said nothing. He was good at not talking. Our 2 children, Maris who is 7 and Oberon who is 5, stood together near the garden gate. They watched the other children running across the lawn. All the children were wearing expensive clothes. Maris wore a dress from a regular store. Oberon wore khaki pants and a polo shirt I bought on sale. They looked clean and neat. They looked fine. But when I saw my sister Soraya's children, I felt a little sad. Soraya's children were dressed in very fancy clothes. They had designer outfits. It looked like they had come from a different world than Maris and Oberon. That was probably the point. My mother wanted to show everyone that my children were not as important. Soraya came walking over. She wore a pretty sundress that looked like it cost a lot of money. "You made it," she said. "Of course we came," I said. "It's Tiberian's birthday." "Well," Soraya said, smiling. "The important guests are already here. The Bellamys, the Whitfields, Judge Dorian and his wife." She looked at my children. "Your little ones can play in the side yard," she said. "The main activities are for the primary guests." Primary guests. Important guests. At an 8-year-old's birthday party. Bastian's hand found mine. His grip was strong and steady. He had been listening. I started to move toward my children, but Bastian touched my elbow. "Not yet," he said quietly. "They're isolated," I whispered. "I know," he said. His voice sounded calm, but his eyes looked serious. "Not yet." Lunch was served on the main lawn. There were long tables with place cards. The place cards showed where each person should sit. Maris and Oberon did not have place cards. Neither did Bastian or me. The message was clear. We could eat, but only after the important guests were seated. My mother sat at the head table like a queen. She looked perfect. Her hair was silver and styled neatly. She wore a cream-colored suit that looked expensive. She was in her element. She loved being the host. "Such a lovely party," Mrs. Bellamy said. "You always know how to create magic, Zariel," she added. My mother smiled. Then she said something that made me feel sick. "One does what one can for the grandchildren who matter," my mother said. She said it loud enough for everyone to hear. Her eyes moved to my children, who were still sitting alone in the side yard. "Some require more investment than others," my mother said. Some people laughed. They laughed politely. They acted like it was a joke. Maris's hand found Oberon's hand. They held each other tightly. They sat very still. Bastian set down his plate without eating. He picked up his briefcase from the ground. I wondered why he brought a briefcase to a birthday party. Now I started to understand. "Bastian," I whispered. "Watch," he said. My mother stood up to give a toast. Everyone became quiet. The string quartet kept playing softly in the background. Champagne glasses were raised. "To my grandson Tiberian," my mother began. She smiled. Her smile was bright, but her eyes were cold. "A child who represents the very best of this family," she said. She paused. "These are the qualities we celebrate today," she continued. "These are the qualities that determine a child's worth, that separate the important from the incidental." More laughter went around the garden. Soraya beamed. Theron raised his glass higher. My mother felt proud. She continued. "I've always believed in investing in excellence," she said. "In children who will carry forward the family legacy with distinction." Then she looked right at my children. "Birthday parties, you see, are for important children only," she said. She smiled, but it was not a warm smile. It was a cold smile. "Important children are the ones who count," she said. "The ones who will make something of themselves." Her eyes stayed on my children. "Yours, Aurelia," she said, looking at me. "Simply don't qualify." The garden went silent. The string quartet kept playing, but it sounded wrong now. It sounded like they were playing while something bad was happening. Maris's face crumpled. She started to cry, but she tried not to. Oberon pressed closer to his sister. He held her tight. They were 2 small kids under a tree, trying not to cry in front of 50 people who had just been told they didn't matter. That's when Bastian stood up. He didn't rush. He didn't shout. He simply stood up from the back table, briefcase in hand, and walked toward the main lawn. Every eye turned to watch him. "Bastian, please," I started, but he was already walking. He stopped in the center of the lawn, right in front of my mother's table. Then he did something I did not expect. He laughed. It wasn't a mean laugh. It wasn't a sarcastic laugh. It was a real laugh, like he had just heard a joke he didn't believe was true. The garden froze. My mother's smile faltered. It was like she had lost her balance. Bastian opened his briefcase. He took out a thick folder of papers. He set them on the table in front of my mother. Then he took out another folder. And another. They were legal documents. Financial papers. Official forms with stamps and signatures. He looked at my mother. "Zariel," he said casually, like he was talking about the weather. "I think we need to talk about trust," he said. My mother's face went stiff. "This is hardly the time," she hissed. Bastian continued. "The Kestrel Family Trust," he said, speaking loudly so everyone could hear. "Established by your father in 1987. A few people gasped. They looked surprised. Bastian kept going. "Current value approximately $47 million. More gasps. Even the string quartet stopped playing. My mother's face turned pale. "The trust that pays for this house," Bastian said, pointing to the mansion behind us. "The trust that covers your country club membership," he said. "The trust that pays for your car," he said. "The trust that paid for this party." He held up the first document. "The trust you've been telling everyone you control," he said. He paused. "You don't," he said. My mother's color drained from her face. Bastian pulled out another document. "Your father's will," he said. "Revised in 2015, 3 years before his death." He looked directly at her. "He made several changes," he said. He looked at me, including appointing a new trustee. My mother's voice shook. "Me," she whispered. The champagne glass in her hand trembled. "That's not possible," Soraya said, standing up. "My mother has been managing the trust for years," Soraya said, upset. Bastian looked at Soraya. "Your mother has been receiving distributions from the trust," he corrected. "Monthly allowances that I approve." He spread more documents on the table. "Bank statements," he said. "Distribution records. Legal authorizations." He held them up so everyone could see. All bearing my signature. My mother's face looked like it was about to break. "Your grandfather knew your mother's priorities," Bastian said, looking at Tiberian and the other important grandchildren. He looked back at my mother. "Your mother has been using the trust money to support the lifestyle she wants," he said. He looked at the guests. "But she doesn't control it." My mother's eyes widened. She looked like a statue that was about to fall. The guests began whispering. Some people looked shocked. Some looked angry. Some looked embarrassed. My mother sat down slowly. Her hands shook. She didn't know what to say. She had spent years acting like she was in charge. She had made everyone believe she was powerful. But now Bastian had shown everyone the truth. The garden party had become quiet again. The children in the side yard still sat under the tree. Maris and Oberon held each other. They didn't know everything that was happening. They only knew their mother and father were upset. They only knew their grandmother had said something hurtful. They only knew they felt small and invisible. Bastian walked back to us. He took my hand. His grip was firm. He looked at Maris and Oberon. "They don't matter," he said quietly, but not to them. To me. He was talking about my mother. He was talking about the way she treated our children. He was talking about the way she treated us. My heart felt heavy. I looked at the guests. They stared at us like we were a show. Like we were entertainment. Like our family was a story they wanted to watch. My mother looked like she had lost everything. Her face was pale. Her mouth was open, but no sound came out. She had always wanted to be the center of attention. But now she was not in control. Now she was the one being watched. Now she was the one being judged. The party had started as a celebration. Now it was a kind of courtroom. Bastian opened the briefcase again. He pulled out more papers. He handed them to the guests. "Here are the trust documents," he said. "Here is the will. Here is the record of every distribution." He looked at my mother. "Everything is here," he said. The guests leaned in. They looked at the documents. They read. They whispered. My mother looked down at the table. She didn't know what to do. She had always used money to control people. She had always used money to make people respect her. But now the money was not hers. Now she was not the one who decided who was important. Now she had to face the truth. The truth was that she was not the boss of the trust. She was not the boss of the money. She was not the boss of anything. My mother had built her whole life around showing people she was powerful. Now her power was gone. Bastian turned to me. "We don't have to stay here," he said softly. I looked at Maris and Oberon. They were still sitting under the tree. They looked scared. I looked at the guests. I saw the faces of people who had laughed at my children. I saw the faces of people who had thought they were better than us. I felt my chest tighten. Bastian squeezed my hand. "Let's go," he said. I nodded. We walked to the side yard. Maris and Oberon looked up. Their eyes were wet. They didn't understand why their grandmother had said such mean things. I knelt down beside them. "I'm so sorry," I whispered. Maris hugged me tight. "I didn't do anything wrong," she said quietly. "No," I said. "You didn't." Oberon looked at me with big eyes. "Why did Grandma say that?" he asked. I didn't know how to explain. I didn't want to say the truth, because the truth was cruel. But I had to say something. "Sometimes grown-ups forget to be kind," I said. "Sometimes they think money makes them better than others." Maris looked at me. "Does that mean we're not important?" she asked. I held her close. "No," I said. "You are very important." Oberon sniffled. "You're important to me," I said. "You're important to your father. And you're important to each other." Maris nodded. We stood up. Bastian looked back at the main lawn. My mother sat at the table, staring at the documents. She looked like she had lost a battle. But she had also lost something more. She had lost the chance to control us with her money. She had lost the chance to make our children feel small. She had lost the chance to make the world believe she was the most important person in the room. I held Maris's hand. I held Oberon's hand. We walked away from the party. We walked away from the people who had laughed. We walked away from the house and the money and the pride. We walked toward our car. Bastian opened the car door for me and the kids. Maris climbed in. Oberon climbed in. Bastian sat down in the front seat. He looked at me. He smiled softly. It was not a happy smile. But it was a brave smile. "We don't have to live like that," he said. "No," I whispered. We drove away. The garden party stayed behind us. The loud music, the fancy clothes, the expensive cake, and the people who thought they were better than us stayed behind. But the thing I felt most was relief. Because for the first time, I felt like we were free. We were free from my mother's cruel words. We were free from her rules. We were free from her judgment. And we were free to love our children without anyone telling us they were not important. We were free to be a family. And that was worth more than all the money in the world. He knew his mother would choose favorites. He knew she would make some children feel more important than others. He knew she would use money like a weapon to control people. He knew she would make people feel bad if they didn't get what she wanted. So, he decided to change the trust rules to protect all his grandchildren equally. He looked back at Maris and Oberon. They were sitting close together under the tree, holding hands like they always did. He could see how much they loved each other and how scared they looked. He knew his mother had made them feel small before, and he didn't want that to happen again. Theron, one of the adults, went pale. His face turned white, like he had seen a ghost. "Why didn't anyone tell us?" he asked loudly. His voice shook. Bastian, the trustee, answered calmly. "Your mother was told in 2015 when the will was read. She chose not to share that information with the family because it didn't fit her story." The truth was heavy. It was like a huge stone that suddenly dropped into the middle of the garden party. People stopped talking. They looked at each other. They looked at Bastian. They looked at Zariel, the grandmother, as if they were waiting for her to say something. Bastian pulled out another paper from his folder. It was a document with writing on it, and it looked official. "She has been getting $40,000 every month for 8 years, Bastian said. "And she has been acting like she controls the whole family fortune." Everyone stared at the papers. The judge leaned forward. Judge Dorian was an older man with glasses, and he looked serious. "These appear legitimate," the judge said slowly. "Kestrel Trust letterhead. Proper seals. They're completely legitimate." Bastian nodded. "I've been the trustee since your father died, Zariel," he said. "Every dollar you spent, I approved. Every party, every vacation, every country club charge. Even today's event." He paused. His mother's hands were shaking. She looked like a woman who had been caught in a lie. "I authorized the payment," Bastian continued. "The caterers were paid from the trust account this morning." Zariel looked around. The garden was full of flowers, fancy chairs, and decorations. People were dressed in beautiful clothes. The party looked perfect. But now, the truth was like a storm cloud covering everything. "So when you say birthday parties are for important children only," Bastian said, "you should understand that this birthday party exists because I decided your grandson was worth celebrating." He looked at Maris and Oberon again. They were quiet now, listening carefully. "Just as I decide every other expense you make," Bastian added. Then he pulled out one more paper. It was a long spreadsheet full of numbers. "Here's an interesting summary," he said. Over the past 8 years, I've authorized $1.6 million in distributions to you, Zariel. People gasped. The word million made everyone's eyes widen. That's your monthly allowance, plus special requests, house maintenance, parties, and gifts for the important grandchildren, Bastian said. He looked at Soraya and Theron. Their faces looked shocked. Meanwhile, Aurelia has never requested a single distribution, he said. Not once. He looked at Zariel again. Aurelia is entitled to the same monthly allowance you receive, Mother. $20,000 per month, according to the trust terms. I felt my jaw drop. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. What? I whispered. You never asked, Bastian said simply. And I followed your lead. You wanted to be independent, build our own life. He turned to me. So we did. Then he turned back to my mother. His voice became serious. But that changes today. The garden was quiet except for the leaves rustling in the breeze. The silence was so heavy you could almost hear people breathing. Effective immediately, Bastian said. I'm restructuring the trust distributions. He looked directly at Zariel. Your monthly allowance is being reduced to match actual minimum living expenses. The word reduced hit her like a punch. The difference will be redirected to Aurelia's family and to equal education funds for all grandchildren, he continued. No more hierarchy. No more important and unimportant children. Zariel's face went red with anger. Her voice shook as she finally found her words. You can't do this, she said. Bastian tapped the documents. He was calm, but his voice had steel underneath. I'm the trustee, he said. Your father gave me complete discretion over distributions. I've been generous because Aurelia asked me to be. He didn't want family drama. She wanted you to enjoy your retirement. He looked at Maris and Oberon again. They were still holding each other, trying to be brave. But that generosity ends when you tell my children they don't count, Bastian said. Judge Dorian spoke up. His voice was strong and clear. I should mention I reviewed your father-in-law's trust documents as a favor to him before he passed, he said. This young man is correct. The trustee has absolute authority over distributions. Zariel sank into her chair. Her face looked smaller now, like the queen of a kingdom who suddenly realized she wasn't actually in charge. Soraya stared at the documents. Her eyes were wide. All these years you've been pretending, she said. I wasn't pretending anything, my mother snapped. I simply allowed you to assume. Theron interrupted angrily. You told us you controlled everything. You made us compete for your approval. You treated Aurelia like. He stopped. He didn't look at me anymore. He looked away like he didn't want to face the truth. You treated Aurelia like she was less than us, he said. Bastian gathered his documents back into the briefcase. His movements were slow and calm, like a person who was finally done with the chaos. The trust attorney will contact everyone this week with the new distribution schedule, he said. All grandchildren will receive equal education funds. All of your father's children will receive equal allowances, no exceptions. He turned to face the guests. Many of them looked uncomfortable now. They realized they had been part of something cruel. They realized they had been helping to humiliate children who were actually protected by the trust. This party cost approximately $15,000, Bastian said. Everyone looked down. Some people looked ashamed. The trust paid for it as always, Bastian continued. But going forward, Zariel, your entertainment budget will be significantly reduced. He looked directly at her. You'll need to choose your celebrations more carefully, he said. And perhaps more kindly. He closed the briefcase with a decisive click. Then he walked across the lawn to where Maris and Oberon sat. He knelt down in front of them, so he could be eye level with their small faces. Eye level with our children, he said firmly. You count. Maris wiped her eyes. Her voice was soft. Are we really rich, Daddy? She asked. We're comfortable, Bastian said. But more importantly, we're kind. That's worth more than any trust fund. He stood up, taking each child's hand. Come on, he said. Let's go get ice cream. Real ice cream, not whatever fancy thing they're serving here. As we walked toward the gate, my mother's voice called out. Sir, wait, please, we need to discuss this, she said. I turned back. She looked smaller somehow, like the queen of her carefully constructed kingdom, discovering she had been ruling at someone else's pleasure all along. What you said about my children, I said quietly. That they don't count, that they're not important. I glanced at Bastian, standing strong and steady with our kids. My husband just showed you exactly how wrong you are, I said. And he didn't even raise his voice. We walked out of the garden party, leaving behind the stunned silence, the expensive decorations, and the carefully constructed hierarchy that had just collapsed like a house of cards. In the car, Oberon asked, "Can we really get ice cream?" "Absolutely," Bastian said, starting the engine. "Even though we're not important enough for birthday parties?" Maris asked, her voice still small. Bastian looked at her in the rearview mirror. "Maris, you're so important that your great-grandfather literally restructured his entire estate to protect you," he said. "You put me in charge specifically to make sure you and your brother would always be treated fairly. That's how important you are." Then Maris asked a question that made my heart ache. "Then why did Grandma say that?" she asked. "Because sometimes people who feel powerless try to make others feel small to feel bigger themselves," I said gently. "Your grandmother forgot she wasn't actually in control. Today your dad reminded her." Maris was quiet for a moment. Then Dad laughed. "I did," Bastian admitted, "because it was absurd. She was bragging about money that isn't even hers at a party she didn't pay for while insulting children who are protected by the very trust she thought she controlled. Sometimes the only response to absurdity is laughter," Oberon said seriously. Bastian smiled. "Yes, and documents," he said. "We drove to the ice cream shop in town. The same place we always went. No pretense. No hierarchy. Just a family getting dessert on a Saturday afternoon." My phone buzzed repeatedly. Messages from Soraya, Theron, my mother. I turned it off. "You okay?" Bastian asked as we sat outside with our cones. "I think so," I said. "I never knew about the monthly allowance we could have been taking." "You never wanted it," he said simply. "You wanted to make our own way. I respected that. $20,000 a month for 8 years. That's almost $2 million, and we're fine without it. Good jobs, good lives, good kids." He watched Maris and Oberon racing around, laughing now. The party was already forgotten. "But maybe it's time to accept what your father wanted you to have," he said. I leaned against him. "She really thought she controlled everything," I said. "She controlled the narrative," Bastian said. "That's different from controlling the money." Maris ran up, chocolate smeared on her face. "Dad, do we have to go to Grandma's parties anymore?" she asked. "Not unless you want to," Bastian said. "Good," she said firmly. "Ice cream is better." Oberon nodded in agreement, his vanilla cone dripping. We sat there as the afternoon faded, watching our children be children, free from hierarchies and judgments. Just 2 kids enjoying ice cream, unaware they had been at the center of a power shift that would reshape their family for generations. Sometimes the most important children are the ones who don't need to be told they're important. They just need to be loved.